Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here today to talk about my favorite ways to recycle old t-shirts. And this is mostly Patrick's old t-shirts because he's really hard on his shirts, and his are bigger than mine, so he ends up having a lot of fabric on his that can be recycled in many ways. And the first way I wanted to mention was this right here. I almost forgot about it when I was writing up my list. This is actually a hot pad that I made by cutting the t-shirts into strips, and then I think I just tied them together because on the back side you can see ties. If I was to do this again, which I probably won't because it was a pain to crochet, but it does make a good heavy pot holder that I don't have to worry about burning any surface. It's very thick. But if I was to do this again, I would cut the strips from the bottom of the t-shirt up so I actually had loops, and then loop them together like I did when making the totes out of plastic grocery bags. And I have a video on that. If you're curious about that, I'll go ahead and link to in the description box down below, showing how to cut the bags and how to loop them together, connect the loops. That way you don't have any knots or anything like that like I had here. So I think I had already had them in strips and not left them in the loop form, and so I ended up having to tie them. And yes, there is another way you can do that where you cut the hole in the end and all that. And I tried doing it that way and it wasn't going to work, so I ended up actually having to tie the ends. But it doesn't matter, that's just the back side. It was more something I was just experimenting with to see how it would turn out. Let me go on and talk about the most common ways that I use t-shirts, and that is basically we cut them into squares and rectangles, whatever shape I can get. I don't try to be perfect, and use them as rags for many different things. So you can see I have some loose ones here, and this one I didn't even bother taking the pocket off. It still has the pocket on it, so you can see it's got holes in it and paint stains and bleach stains and whatever else and thin spots. So one of Pat's old shirts. One of the things that I use these for are handkerchiefs. I don't have handkerchiefs, and I rarely use facial tissues. For years and years I've just used t-shirt rags. And then now that we're watching the grandbaby, I keep piles of these everywhere because he tends to like to spit up. And so having these handy anywhere, they make good burp rags because they're nice and big, most of them, and you can either double them over like this and go like that, or I can open it all the way up and spread it all the way across me or across him when I'm feeding him, sort of like a bib. I put his bib on too, but I try to keep his clothes as nice as I can. And so those work really great for that. And then of course there's a lot of these get, the uglier ones especially, get used out in Pat's shop for shop rags, and he uses quite a bit of them. And the nice thing about that is if you get some kind of substance on there that's a permanent thing that's not going to come off, we can just toss them, no big deal, because the shirts were wore out and had holes in them anyway. So instead of just tossing them, we just repurpose them. But most of the time the things that get on there are things that we can clean up. Now this one right here has a little bit of my homemade furniture polish right here that I have a video on, and I'll link to that video in the description box down below. But really all I do is just take a little bit of this and I can polish any of my wood surfaces, whether it be my countertop here, my table, or any of the wood furniture that we have, including that little stool slash desk slash kid table that Patrick made for me, which we also have a video on that as well. And of course I'll link to that in the description box. So polishing wood with it is another great option. I also oftentimes will use these for wiping off my wood stove. Now a lot of times when I'm seasoning my wood stove, I'll just use newspaper and coconut oil. But if it's those in between times I just want to wipe the stuff off the wood stove, this gets used for that. So basically just miscellaneous rags that get used for anything. I'll use it for wiping down floors and various other things like that. And then one time, many years ago, I had a really bad sprain. In fact, if it had been any worse, the accident I had, I think it would actually broke my wrist, but the sprain was so bad that I had to wear this big heavy splint, and it hurt so much. And so I just took one of the bigger t-shirt rags and made a sling out of it for my arm. You see people do videos on the many things you can do with bandanas. Well, The same applies for t-shirt rags. You can, in fact, t-shirt rags can often have even more uses than just a regular bandana and be cheaper because you're recycling it in the first place, but you don't have to hem it. That's what's great about t-shirt material. You just cut it and you don't have to hem it. Unless you really want it to look nicer, you don't need to hem it. Where if you were to cut your bandana pieces into smaller pieces, you would have to hem them because it would fray terribly. And they're also stretchy, they're softer and more comfortable. So we carry a couple of t-shirt rags in each of our go bags that we keep in the rigs because of its many purposes. And then another thing, I don't use these for this, but for those who didn't like using the flannel idea for cloth wipes that I use in place of toilet paper for myself, or even as reusable baby wipes, some people didn't like it because they didn't want to bother with the hemming and they don't like the way that flannel frays. Though after a few washings, it really does quit. Well, if you're not wanting to hassle with that and you're wanting to make your own toilet wipes or baby wipes, you can use old t-shirts for that. You can't rip them the way you will flannel to get the sizes you want, but you can cut them, and once they're cut, they're not going to fray and they'll last for a very long time. And again, they're very soft. I like flannel better for that purpose, but these are still a really great option when it comes to that. And these also make good napkins too. So even though I do make my own napkins that we use, table napkins, out of cloth, and be it flannel, linen, or cotton, these also work great for that as well. They don't look as nice, but they still will work for that. And another thing that I almost forgot about, usually I'll use cotton pieces for the tops. When I'm making vinegar, I'll just have some nice looking pieces of cotton print so it looks nice. Before I started doing that, because I wasn't making all the skirts, so I didn't have as much of these nice fabrics on hand, I was using old t-shirt rags that I cut into smaller squares, and that was what I used to cover my vinegar with, or any other ferments that I wanted just a cloth on top. That's what I use for that. And I also know that Patrick uses these when he's applying a finish to things. For example, here's one of his rolling pins. He'll use smaller chunks of t-shirts and put his little finish on there, which is made mostly of coconut oil and a little bit of beeswax. All you got to do is just cut them into squares, rectangles, in any size you want, have them handy, and I guarantee you'll think of all kinds of different ideas that you can use these for. I know there's a lot more that I'm forgetting, but I'm sure many of you have some great ideas that you would like to share, so please do that in the comment section down below so people can learn from you as well. And let's keep those ideas coming for great ways that we can repurpose, reuse all kinds of different items. I do have a video out on the denim, and I also have one out on bottles and jars. I'll link to both of those down below. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.